The moment he stepped through the grand ballroom doors, his world shifted. Laughter echoed, champagne flowed, and diamonds sparkled under the golden chandeliers, but none of it prepared him for what he saw next. There she stood, and beside her were 4 children, with eyes that looked exactly like his. The laughter hit him before the doors even opened. It wasn't the kind of laughter Alexander Pierce was used to, the forced kind that lived at boardroom dinners, or the empty kind, echoing off the walls of networking events. This was different, real, alive. It spilled through the gilded arches of the Langley Estates ballroom, like a song he hadn't heard in years. He hesitated at the threshold, hand resting on the brass handle, the other smoothing the crease in his perfectly tailored suit. The marble floors beyond gleamed under the soft golden glow of chandeliers. Soft music rose from a quartet in the corner, barely rising above the hum of conversations and the clinking of glasses. Everything about this night was calculated to perfection, elegant, controlled, just like his life, and yet something about tonight felt off, as if fate had scribbled its own notes into his script. Alexander stepped in, nodding politely to the event organizer, who greeted him with too much enthusiasm. His donation to the Children's Future Foundation had bought him a prime seat at the front and a name that the elite whispered with admiration. Pierce International Holdings had become a global force. Tech, real estate, pharmaceuticals. If it made headlines, chances were his name was behind it. But success had its cost. And tonight, part of him wondered if he was finally ready to face the receipt. He moved past silk gowns and polished shoes, past the applause as a young violinist finished her solo, past the curated smiles of people who lived off image. Then, just as he reached for a glass of champagne, he heard it again. Laughter. This time it was closer, sharper, and for some reason, it pulled him in. He turned and saw her. Her back was to him, but he knew instantly the way her posture tilted, slightly to the left, the way her fingers danced along the rim of her glass without ever lifting it. 5 years hadn't changed that. Caroline. His breath caught before he could stop it. She turned, as if she felt him, their eyes locked, and just like that, the carefully built walls of Alexander Pierce began to tremble. He hadn't seen her since the divorce, since the day they both signed the papers in silence and walked out of that courthouse in opposite directions. No words, no explanations, just an ending. Caroline looked radiant, not in the extravagant way of the women around her, but in a softer, deeper way. Her auburn hair framed her face in loose waves. Her navy dress clung just enough to suggest elegance without effort. There was something more grounded about her now, more complete. And then, he saw them, 4 children, huddled near the refreshment table, giggling as they snuck tiny cakes from a silver tray. One of them, a little boy no older than 8, threw his head back in laughter, and for a second, Alexander's heart stopped. The eyes, the cheekbones, the dimples, he knew those features. He saw them every morning in the mirror. All 4 children looked unmistakably like him. His grip on the champagne glass faltered. No, it couldn't be. He tried to breathe, but the air felt thick now, heavy with the weight of something long buried. His mind scrambled for logic, reason, anything that would explain what he was seeing. Cousins, siblings from another marriage, adopted, but the resemblance was too precise, too perfect. Caroline's gaze hadn't left him. There was no shock in her expression, no panic. Only calm. As if she had been expecting this moment, and suddenly, Alexander realized something chilling. She hadn't run from him. She had simply moved on quietly, left him behind. He took a step forward, but his feet felt rooted in place. His mind raced back to the final days of their marriage, when work had consumed him, when late nights and investor calls had mattered more than late dinners or weekend walks. She had asked him once, in a rare moment of stillness, "Will there ever be room for us?" He hadn't answered, and now, maybe this was the answer she'd written herself. A new life, a family. Without him. The oldest child noticed Alexander staring. A girl, maybe 10. She looked up, her expression thoughtful, her gaze steady. Then she smiled wide and warmed for a second. It was like looking into his childhood. He felt his chest tighten. Was this real, or was his mind playing cruel tricks? He took another step. Caroline turned fully now, giving him a nod. Not distant, not cold, just quiet acknowledgement, like someone greeting a memory. The air between them thickened with all the things they had never said. Alexander's fingers brushed against his cufflink. The initials stared back at him like a brand. A JP once. He had been proud of them. Now, they felt hollow. He needed answers. But not here. Not in a ballroom filled with strangers and symphonies. He wasn't ready to confront the truth, but he couldn't run from it either. And as he took another step forward, toward the woman he once loved, and the children who just might be his, he knew one thing with painful clarity. This night would change everything. Forever. Asterisk, he didn't remember. Walking only arriving. 1 minute Alexander stood at the edge of the ballroom, rooted by the impossible image of Caroline and 4 children with his face, and the next, he found himself by the ivy-covered balcony doors, breath fogging slightly in the night air. His heart beat against his chest like a drum that had forgotten its rhythm. The sounds of the gala were muffled, now soft music, clinking glasses, distant applause, but none of it touched him. He needed answers, not from guesses or stares, not from the tightening in his chest or the haunting sense of something lost too long ago. He needed the truth from her. But Caroline hadn't followed. She remained near the refreshment table, chatting casually with a woman in pearls, her body angled away from him. The children were now seated on a velvet couch nearby, 2 of them playfully fighting over a program booklet, another sipping juice from a tall glass, and the youngest leaning sleepily against her side. He stared at them, these mysterious small beings with his nose and his mother's eyes. Each of them carried a thread of familiarity so vivid, it was almost painful. Could she really have kept something like this from him? His mind went back to the last year of their marriage. She had been distant, yes, but so had he. He was always flying, always building, always planning. 1 meeting turned into 3. 1 missed dinner became a pattern. And when Caroline had asked to talk, really talk, he'd waved her off. I'm doing this for us, he had told her once, standing in the middle of their penthouse with a phone pressed to one ear and a laptop balanced on his other hand. Her reply had been soft, "Are you?" And then, she was gone. They had separated without drama, without war. The silence had been mutual. He had assumed there was no one else, that she wanted peace. He had let her go, convincing himself it was best. But now, for children. One of the gala volunteers approached him with a practiced smile and a tray of hors d'oeuvres. He declined with a polite nod and turned away from the crowd. He needed a moment. Just one. From the corner of his eye movement, a small figure had broken away from the couch. The oldest girl, the one who had smiled at him earlier. She walked with an elegance beyond her years, her dress fluttering slightly as she made her way across the floor straight toward him. Alexander straightened. She stopped just a few feet away and looked up at him with curious, intelligent eyes. She said, her voice clear, "You're Mr. Pierce, right?" He blinked. "Yes, that's right." She nodded slowly, thoughtfully. "I've seen your picture in Mummy's drawer." The world tilted. He crouched slightly to her level. "You have?" She looked at him closely now. "You look a lot like my brother Thomas." Silence hung between them like glass. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lily." "Nice to meet you, Lily." She grinned. "Nice to meet you too." Then, with the nonchalance only children possess, she skipped away again. Alexander watched her return to the couch, where Thomas, he assumed, was now stacking cookies like bricks. He had a sudden, piercing memory, a younger version of himself, doing the same thing at his grandmother's kitchen table. He was losing control of the moment. He needed to speak to Caroline. Alone, he scanned the room again, searching for her, but Caroline was gone. No, not gone. Stepping out onto the terrace through the far glass door, lit by the soft gold of the sconces, she stood with her arms crossed loosely, looking out into the garden like someone bracing for a wave. He didn't wait. Crossing the ballroom, he passed servers and donors and curious eyes, his focus narrowing to a single figure against the dark blue sky. When he reached her, she turned slowly. There were no games in her eyes, no guilt, just a calm steadiness that made it all the more overwhelming. "Hello, Alex," she said quietly. He hadn't heard that name in years. "Caroline," he replied, voice low, cautious. A silence settled between them, not awkward, but heavy. He looked at her carefully, noting the way she studied him back. Not defensively, but with something that almost resembled compassion. "I saw them," he said finally. "The children, I know." "Caroline," he stepped forward, then stopped. "Are they?" Her eyes didn't flinch. "They're mine." He exhaled slowly. "That's not what I asked." A pause. "Then, they're yours too." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. He opened his mouth, but no sound came. All the thoughts in his head scrambled, clashing with emotions he hadn't let himself feel in years. "Why?" he whispered. "Why didn't you tell me?" Caroline's gaze dropped briefly, then returned. "Because you weren't ready. I had a right to know." "Yes, you did." Her voice was steady, but not sharp. "But at the time, you weren't someone I trusted to put them first." That cut deeper than he expected. He turned away, hands on the stone railing. His jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. "I wasn't punishing you, Alex," she continued gently. "I was protecting them, and maybe even protecting you too." He looked at her, eyes dark with confusion. "Protecting me from what?" "From knowing what you'd lost before you were ready to face it." The truth hit him like cold rain. He hadn't just lost a marriage. He had lost years, memories, birthdays, first steps, laughter. "Are you with someone?" he asked finally, forcing the words out. "No," she said. "I've been focused on them." More silence. "I want to know them," he said, voice thick. "If you'll let me." Caroline looked at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "We'll see." He knew it wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no. And for the first time in years, he felt something shift, not in the world but in himself. Not everything lost was gone forever. Some things waited, some things still had a chance. ChatGPT said. The next morning, Alexander didn't wake to the sound of his usual 6 a.m. calendar chime or the soft hum of his apartment's automated curtains opening. He had turned it all off the night before. Instead, he lay in bed long after dawn broke, staring at the ceiling of his penthouse, wide awake, replaying every second of the night before. Caroline's voice, the way she said, "They're yours." To Lily's eyes, Thomas's smile, the way the youngest had leaned into her like she was the center of their universe. They were real, and they were his, all four of them. He sat up slowly, hands resting on his knees, breathing deeply. He had built billion-dollar ventures, bought out companies in boardrooms thick with tension, negotiated in languages he barely spoke, but nothing had ever undone him like a 10-year-old girl quietly saying, "I've seen your picture in Mummy's drawer." For years, he had convinced himself that leaving the marriage was necessary, inevitable. But last night unraveled that version of the truth. It hadn't been clean, it had been quiet, and silent wounds tend to run deeper. He rose and crossed the room, phone in hand, then paused mid-step. He had no number for Caroline, no address. It struck him like a second revelation, how completely out of her life he had been. The woman he once shared a home with now existed behind closed doors he no longer had keys to. He pressed the call button for Elias, his assistant. "Good morning, sir," came the voice on the other end, sharp and efficient as always. "I need you to find someone for me." Caroline Whitmore. A pause, of course. "Any particular reason?" "She has information I need." "Understood. I'll prioritize it." He hung up and stared out at the skyline, watching clouds shift above the towers he had helped fund. His empire stretched from New York to Dubai to Seoul. But what good was a kingdom, he wondered, if your legacy didn't even know your name? By noon, Ilias sent a secure file. Caroline lived in Brooklyn now, a modest brownstone in Park Slope. She ran a small non-profit helping single mothers transition back into the workforce. That piece caught Alexander off guard. She was still building, still giving, still creating, just not in his world. He debated texting, calling, showing up, but none of it felt right. Not yet. Instead, he opened his laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard before typing out an email. Short, honest, no signatures or logos. "Caroline, last night shifted something in me. I don't know what you see when you look at me now, but I see what I didn't see then. If you'd be open to it, I'd like to take you and the kids to lunch. No pressure, just time, just honesty." "Alex," he hit send before he could overthink it. And for the first time in years, he waited for a reply, not as a CEO expecting a report, but as a man hoping for a second chance. 2 days passed. Nothing. Then on the third, just as he stepped out of a meeting with investors from Tokyo, his phone buzzed. 1 hour Carrefour Moore, San RD Avenue. "Just me, Caroline." He read it twice, 3 times. She was giving him a chance. Not a reunion, not forgiveness, but a meeting, and that was enough. When he arrived at the cafe, the sky had darkened with afternoon, rain, droplets streaking the windows. Caroline sat at a corner table, her hair tied back, a book closed in front of her. No makeup, no diamonds, just her. He paused at the door, watching her for a heartbeat longer than he should have, then stepped inside. "Hi," he said softly. She looked up, nodding once. "Hi." He took the seat across from her. The silence between them wasn't tense, but it wasn't light either. "Thank you for coming," he said. She studied him. "I wasn't sure I would. I know. And I wasn't sure you'd want more than a moment of curiosity." "I don't want just a moment," he said carefully. "I want time, connection. I want to understand." Caroline folded her hands, eyes sharp but not cruel. "You were gone a long time, Alex. Even before you left, you lived in a world I couldn't reach. I lived in a world I built to feel safe," he said, surprising even himself. "But I didn't realize I was shutting you out of it." She nodded slowly. "And by the time you looked back, I wasn't there anymore." He breathed in deeply. "Why didn't you tell me about them?" "I almost did," she said. "Twice. But every time I thought about calling, I imagined your assistant answering. I imagined you mid-flight to some negotiation. I imagined you saying, 'Why now?'" He flinched. "I didn't want them to feel like an obligation," she added. "Or worse, a mistake." "They're not," he said quickly. "Not even close. I know that now," she replied. "But I needed to be sure you knew it." He looked down at the table, fingers tapping once. "I want to meet them," he said, "when you're ready. On your terms." Caroline was quiet for a long moment, then she pulled something from her bag. A drawing, childlike, crayons and colored pencils, a family 5 figures, 4 small, 1 tall. Above it, written in blocky handwriting, "My family, they know about you," she said softly. "Not all the details, but they know." He stared at the paper, at the figure that looked just like him, at the children who had drawn him into their world, even when he hadn't been part of it. A lump rose in his throat. He looked up. "Can I earn my place in that picture?" Caroline met his gaze, and for the first time since the night of the gala, she smiled. "Maybe," she said, "if you're willing to show up, not just once, but always." He nodded. "I will." And this time, he meant it. 3 weeks later, Alexander stood at the edge of Prospect Park, staring at the playground beyond the wrought iron fence, like it was a territory he didn't yet have permission to cross. The sounds were familiar yet. Foreign children laughing, sneakers skidding on pavement, a mother calling out, "Be careful, sweetheart." Somewhere on the swings, a little boy screamed with joy as he soared toward the sky. Alexander checked his watch. 2 minutes early. He had arrived before Caroline, as instructed. She had texted that morning, "Meet us at the playground entrance. Let's see how today goes." 1 hour dot. That 1 hour felt heavier than a boardroom negotiation. There was no pitch deck for this. No talking points, just him. He inhaled slowly, adjusting the collar of his jacket, rehearsing the moment over in his head for the 100th time. He had built an empire by preparing for every possibility, but this was all feeling and instinct. It terrified him, and yet, for the first time in years, it also made him feel alive. Then he saw them, Caroline walking beside a double stroller, pushing the youngest Elsie and Noah, if he remembered correctly. Lily and Thomas skipped just ahead of her, laughing at some inside joke, completely unaware of the man waiting just up the path. His heart jumped. Lily spotted him first. She slowed down, then stopped. Her eyes met his, and for a beat, neither of them moved. Then she grinned wide, confident, welcoming, and broke into a light jog. "Hi again," she called, stopping a few feet away. "Hi, Lily," he said, kneeling a bit to meet her eye level. "It's good to see you. Mom said you were coming today. I told Thomas, but he didn't believe me." By now, Thomas had arrived too, a bit more cautious. He eyed Alexander with a wary kind of curiosity, standing behind Lily as if she were his scout. Alexander didn't force it. He just smiled. "Hi, Thomas." Thomas nodded but said nothing. Then Caroline arrived. She gave Alexander a look that was somewhere between trust and caution, as if reminding him silently that this moment wasn't about promises, it was about presence. "We usually play for a bit over there," she said, pointing to the climbing dome. "They love the monkey bars. May I join you?" he asked. She considered him for a moment, then nodded. "Let's take it slow." So they did. At first, he stood beside Caroline, watching the kids play, answering a few of Lily's questions, and offering a gentle hand when Noah dropped his sippy cup for the 3rd time. He let the children approach him on their terms. Lily did most of the talking, and even little Elsie, wide-eyed and shy, peeked out from her stroller and offered a tentative smile. Thomas remained the quietest, Alexander noticed how protective he was of his siblings, how he shadowed them on the playground, ensuring no one fell or got left behind. That trait hit Alexander hard. He used to do the same for his younger cousin when they were kids, always watching, always guarding. At one point, Caroline stepped away to take a phone call, leaving him alone with the children. A silence fell between them. Then Lily tugged at his sleeve. "Wanna push me on the swing?" He hesitated, then smiled. "I'd love to." He walked over and gently pushed her, gradually getting a rhythm. Her laughter rang out as she swung higher, hair flying behind her. "You're good at this," she shouted. "Maybe I've had practice," he said with a grin. Thomas, nearby on the slide, watched with careful eyes. Finally, as if making a decision, he came closer. "You used to know Mummy?" he asked, quiet but direct. Alexander paused the swing gently, turning to face him. "Yes," he said, "we used to be very close." Thomas nodded. "Why didn't you stay?" The question cut deep. "I made some mistakes," Alexander said softly, kneeling so he could meet his son's eyes. "I thought I was doing the right thing at the time, but I hurt people. I didn't mean to, but I did." Thomas looked at him for a long moment, then glanced toward Caroline, who was still on the phone in the distance. "Did you ever think about us?" It wasn't an accusation, just a question, a quiet truth that deserved an honest answer. Alexander nodded. "I didn't know about you, but I've thought a lot about what I missed, and I want to be here now, if you'll let me." Thomas didn't say anything, but he sat down on the bench next to him. Not close but not far either. That was enough. Later, as the sun began to dip behind the trees and the shadows grew longer, Caroline called out that it was time to go. "Can he walk us to the car?" Lily asked, already grabbing Alexander's hand. Caroline hesitated. Thomas looked up at her and said, "It's okay." So they all walked together down the path, Caroline pushing the stroller, Lily telling a story about a school project involving frogs, Thomas walking quietly beside Alexander, who listened with quiet amazement to every detail of their lives. He had never been part of. At the curb, Caroline turned to him. "Thank you for today." He nodded. "Thank you for trusting me." She looked at the kids, then back at him. "We'll see how they feel. Maybe next weekend again." He smiled, heart swelling. "I'll be there." As he watched them drive away, a single truth settled in his chest like warm sunlight. It wasn't too late. It might take time. It might take patience, but something new had begun. Something rooted not in the past they had lost, but in the future they were still writing. ChatGPT said. The smell of cinnamon and baked apples filled the air as Alexander stepped into the warm, modest kitchen of Caroline's brownstone for the first time. It was Saturday afternoon, exactly 1 week after the park. He had been invited for lunch, not just to see the children again, but to step, slowly and deliberately, into their world. He had arrived with a bouquet of yellow favorite, if he remembered correctly, and a box of gourmet chocolate chip cookies tied in a ribbon for the kids. He didn't expect it to win anyone over, but it felt right to bring something, not extravagant, just thoughtful. The kids were already gathered around the kitchen island, coloring on construction paper, markers spread like a rainbow across the counter. The youngest, Elsie, sat in her booster seat, scribbling in pink with total concentration. Noah clutched a blue crayon and was trying without much success to draw a rocket ship. Thomas looked up when Alexander entered, gave a small nod of acknowledgement, then returned to his drawing. Lily, ever the ambassador, lit up. "You're early," she exclaimed. "Mum's still setting the table." "I figured I'd help if I can," Alexander replied, slipping off his coat and stepping inside. Caroline emerged from the hallway, with a dish towel slung over her shoulder, her expression neutral but not cold. She wore jeans and a soft burgundy sweater, hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. She looked at home. "You brought tulips," she said, seeing the bouquet. Something flickered in her eyes. "I remembered," he said. She nodded and took them without another word, setting them in a vase with practiced ease. Lunch was simple grilled cheese sandwiches, tomato soup, and apple crisp bubbling in the oven. Alexander couldn't remember the last time he had eaten something not served on a porcelain plate by a private chef. But here, in this sunlit kitchen with mismatched chairs and cartoon magnets on the fridge, he felt more grounded than he had in years. He helped Lily butter the bread. He handed Elsie a new napkin after she accidentally spilled her juice. He even made small talk with Thomas about school projects, careful not to press too hard. But it wasn't just about bonding. It was about learning. He watched the way Caroline comforted Noah when he grew frustrated with his fork, the way she instinctively knew when Lily was about to ask for seconds before she even opened her mouth, the way she kept everything moving, every little chaos managed with a quiet strength that made him feel both admiration and guilt. She had done it all without him. When lunch was finished, Lily tugged at his sleeve again. "Want to see our room?" "Sure," he said, smiling. The children led him up the creaky wooden staircase to a small but cozy shared bedroom. Bunk beds lined one wall. The walls were decorated with crayon drawings, space posters, and glow-in-the-dark stars. A shelf of worn picture books and Lego sets stood in the corner. "This one's mine," Lily said, pointing proudly to the top bunk. "But I let Elsie nap there sometimes." "See," Thomas added, gesturing toward a frame. "That's a picture of Mum with us at the beach. Last summer." Alexander stepped closer. 4 smiling faces, Caroline in sunglasses, hair windblown, holding Elsie, while the others clung to her like a lifeline. No trace of him in the photo, but somehow, now, he was standing in front of it. "You have a beautiful room," he said. "Very creative." "It's kind of small," Thomas mumbled. "But we like it." Alexander looked around, again really looked. The toys were hand-me-downs, the bedding mismatched. Nothing about it said wealth or luxury, but it said love. It said home. Downstairs, as the kids played with puzzles, Alexander found Caroline standing by the sink, rinsing dishes. He dried his hands and offered to help. She gave him a plate and a towel, and they worked in silence, elbow to elbow. Finally, she spoke. "You handled them well today." "I didn't know what to expect," he admitted. "Neither did I." He paused, then added, "You've done an incredible job." Caroline's hands stilled in the water. She looked up at him, not defensive, not dismissive, just tired. "I've done what I could," she said. "Some days that felt like more than enough. Others, barely anything at all." He wanted to reach out, to touch her hand, her shoulder, but he didn't. She wasn't asking for comfort, she was sharing her truth. "I'd like to contribute," he said. "Financially, yes, but also with time, stability, presence." She dried her hands slowly. "They need consistency, Alex. Not just Saturday visits, not gifts. They need to know you'll be there when it's not convenient, when they're sick, when they're scared, when there's nothing fun or easy about it." "I understand. Do you?" she asked gently, turning to face him. "Because this isn't about earning a place in their lives with good behavior and charm. It's about being there when it's messy, when it's hard, when it's thankless." He nodded. "That's exactly what I want." Her expression softened just slightly. "Then we'll keep going," she said. "But I need to go slow. For the man, for me, of course." He left an hour later, with a hug from Lily, a shy wave from Noah, and a rare, quiet smile from Thomas. Caroline walked him to the door, where she paused before opening it. "They like you," she said. His heart caught. "And you?" Caroline looked up at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "I'm still remembering who you are," she said, "but I'm willing to keep finding out." And with that, she opened the door. Alexander stepped out into the cool afternoon air, feeling both exposed and deeply, quietly hopeful. This time, he wasn't chasing success. He was rebuilding something far more fragile, far more precious, and he wasn't going to let it slip away again. The wind carried the smell of fresh rain as Alexander stood outside the elementary school gymnasium, nervously adjusting the cuffs of his jacket. Through the tall glass windows, he could see a flurry of activity, parents chatting, teachers directing foot traffic, children in mismatched costumes waiting for their turn to perform. The spring celebration and talent showcase banner hung above the double doors, flapping slightly in the breeze. This was the first school event he'd ever been invited to, as more than an observer. Caroline had sent him the flyer the week before, with a short message: "Thomas will be doing a piano piece. Lily and the twins are in the finale. You're welcome to join us if you'd like." She didn't add more, but she didn't have to. That quiet invitation had spoken volumes. A door left open, not wide, but open enough for him to step through if he was willing. He was inside. The gym buzzed with the nervous energy of children and the warm hum of community. Rows of folding chairs faced a small makeshift stage. Caroline had saved him a seat near the middle, next to hers. He spotted her immediately smiling at another parent, holding Elsie on her hip, while Noah sat beside her with a juice pouch in hand. When she saw Alexander approach, something shifted in her eyes. Not surprise, not hesitation, but a soft acknowledgement, like maybe, finally, he belonged there. He greeted her gently and sat beside the children, offering Noah a fist bump, which was returned after a moment of deliberation. Elsie leaned into Caroline's shoulder, peeking at him curiously from behind, a lock of blonde curls. "Is it okay if I record Thomas's performance?" he whispered. Caroline nodded. He'd like that. The lights dimmed, and the program began. Kindergartners recited poems, first graders sang about seasons. A third-grade class did an interpretive dance involving scarves and awkward clapping. Then, finally, the MC announced, "And now, we welcome Thomas Westfield, performing Claire de Lune on piano." Alexander's breath caught. Thomas walked onto the stage with that quiet seriousness he always carried, dressed in a clean white button-up and navy pants. He didn't wave, didn't smile, just sat down at the small upright piano like he was preparing for something sacred, and then he began to play. The room faded. The notes were soft, halting at first, but then something remarkable happened. Thomas settled in, his fingers found the rhythm, his posture lifted, and he played with the delicate precision of someone far older than his age. Each note lingered, each pause was intentional, and through it all, Alexander sat frozen, watching not just a child, but his child speak through music in a way that words never could. Beside him, Caroline's eyes shimmered. When Thomas finished, the applause was polite, but heartfelt. He bowed quickly and returned to his seat with the same quiet composure. Alexander leaned in. That was incredible. Thomas shrugged, but there was a flicker of pride in his eyes. After a few more acts, the final performance began. A group number with kids from every grade level. Lily appeared in the second row, wearing a glittery headband, grinning from ear to ear as she waved at the audience. Noah stood beside her, doing his best to follow the choreography, while Elsie wandered off from the line twice before a teacher gently guided her back in place. It was chaos, it was adorable, it was real, and Alexander found himself laughing softly, not out of amusement, but from something deeper, joy, wholeness. After the show, families spilled into the hallway for photos and snacks. Caroline gave Thomas a proud hug, while Lily ran over to Alexander, tugging his hand. "Did you see me?" she asked breathlessly. "You were the star of the show," he said. "I've never seen anyone spin so fast." She beamed. "I practiced in the hallway all week." Clearly paid off. They gathered around a table with paper cups of lemonade and frosted cupcakes. It wasn't the kind of gala Alexander was used to, but somehow it felt more important than anything he'd ever attended. Later, as they walked toward the parking lot, Caroline spoke without looking at him. "They'd been talking about you all week. Good things, I hope," he teased gently. "Mostly," she said, but there was a smile in her voice. Thomas said, "You looked proud." During his performance, I am. Caroline stopped near her car, turned to face him. The evening light painted her features in soft gold. For a moment, the sounds of the world, the traffic, the chatter, the bustle fell away. "You're showing up," she said, "not just for them, for you, too." "I didn't realize how much I needed this," he said quietly, "and you still have a long way to go, but I see the effort." He nodded. "I'm not perfect, but I'm here, every step." She didn't say anything for a moment. Then she opened the trunk, started helping the kids with their backpacks and jackets. He stepped in to help, and as they worked together, it no longer felt like two separate lives trying to negotiate shared space. It felt like something new, a rhythm forming, a bridge being built, one ordinary moment at a time. As the car pulled away, with Caroline waving from the driver's seat and the children blowing kisses from the back, Alexander stood on the curb alone, but not lonely. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking about his next acquisition, his next deal, or his next headline. He was thinking about next Saturday, and the Saturday after that, and the hundreds more that would follow if he kept showing up, one day at a time. Because this messy, unpredictable, beautiful life wasn't something he could control, but it was something he could choose, and he was choosing it fully. Not just to make up for the past, but to finally build a future that mattered.